Actually, surprisingly not that bad. I thought it was going to be sort of like 30 frames maybe, but so far it's actually really not that bad, and it definitely does seem playable. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel here. So today I'm doing something a little bit different, and I'm basically benchmarking a PC that's already been built. I'm not going to rebuild this PC. I bought it as is, and this is a $35 hospice PC. Now, what a hospice is basically charity. It's a charity that people donate to. They donate their old clothes, electronics, furniture, whatever, and then people buy them, and the proceeds go to the hospice, which is a cancer care facility. So if you buy at a hospice, you are directly contributing to helping people with cancer, which is a good feeling. In any case, that's where I got this PC. This is a $35 PC. Now, this is by no means a new PC, but I mean it's $35. That's probably what it costs for a family to dine out at a cheap restaurant. So yeah, so let's get into the specs of this PC here. So when I got this, it didn't have the blue fans, but I had 4 blue fans laying around, so I just added them, and I think it gives it a nice little look. But you know, there's nothing special in here. It's older components. There's no backplate on the motherboard, and yeah, I know it's what you can expect for $35. So starting with the CPU, this is a 4th gen i3. I'm not sure of the code name exactly, but it is only a dual core. But from what I've seen, it doesn't run too slowly, so that's not too bad. And for some entry-level gaming, you will be able to use it. And then moving on to the graphics card, we have a GTX 550 Ti. Now this is a 1 gig card, so again, light gaming. You'll be able to play esports titles mostly, and not even at very good frame rates, but you'll be able to play them, and you would need to use a 720p screen as well. I don't think this PC will handle HD very well, so we'll be testing at 720p today. It's got a 1TB hard drive in it, and then apart from that, it's got 8 gigs of DDR3 RAM, 1033 megahertz. So this PC is nothing to write home about, but it also costs next to nothing. So I think, you know, for some light gaming, it might be a viable option for someone that wants to get into gaming but doesn't have the means to do so necessarily. Or if you want to give someone a cheap gift, someone that maybe wants to start playing something like Minecraft or League of Legends or Dota, you could buy a complete setup like this for around under $100. You can go for a cheaper keyboard and mouse, and probably get it for around like $50 to $60 for the whole thing now, which is actually insane. That is the cost to entry, because when I was a kid, it was probably about 4 times as much for the cheapest systems. So yeah, it's accessible is the point I'm trying to make, and people can play games for very low budgets. You're not going to play the best games at the best frame rates, but you will be gaming, and you know, there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of old games that you can play if you get yourself a DVD-ROM, external DVD-ROM. So you are definitely not limited. And with that said, let's get into it. Let's test out a few older games. I'm not going to be playing my normal benchmark games because they just aren't made for a PC like this. So I'm just going to be playing some random ones and seeing how they perform on this system. So let's get into benchmarking. Stay with me. Okay, getting into the benchmark here, and the first game we're playing is a little indie title called Prodeus. Now this game has reached some good success, and I think it's a really cool and unique game. It's got some awesome graphics, obviously in a sort of like a pixelated style, but the way they did it is sort of like a very high definition pixelation, and I think it looks amazing. The lighting is good, the textures are really good, the mapping, everything, and it just has like a really cool feel to it. So I think it's going to be interesting to test. and going to be interesting to see how the PC does. I didn't expect this, but so far the PC is around 40. Now that might drop when we see combat, but it's actually not that bad. Now this is at 720p, but it is also at maximum graphics. So I'm pretty confused about how it's performing this well, but yeah, I think it looks good, and it's running pretty well. Now you can hear the PC is going off, like this thing is working hard, and that GPU just isn't made for games like this, like it's just too old, but it's handling it okay. I mean, we're getting close to 60 FPS right now. Now I will be curious to see what happens when the combat starts, but so far it's definitely playable. And so that's sort of like a testament that you can even play some indie games with a PC like this. So this game has sprite-based enemies, but they are based off 3D models. I do think you can switch on 3D models if you want to, but yeah, still around 40 frames, and I'm just curious to see what happens when we start shooting. The lighting in this game is really good. Massive frame spike there with all of the particles, but I guess that's to be expected. We are also playing this off of a hard drive, which also makes a big difference. Still around 40 frames. So definitely playable at this point. Now there will be some performance drops as we saw, and that GPU is really hot, getting around 85, but it doesn't seem to be going up from that. The CPU is fine. CPU isn't really doing too much. GPU is at 100% utilization. CPU is only at around 50, and we are using around 5 gigs of RAM. But we're gonna get a gun now, so we'll see how it does when we actually start playing in combat. Oh, that was a rookie mistake. But what was I saying? Yeah, you see those lag spikes are to be expected. But that could also just be because we're playing off of quite an old hard drive. So there are some lag spikes, but it's not too bad, but I just think the graphics card is struggling a little bit. But I mean, it's playable. Not exactly sure where to go. Down there maybe? So yeah, it's definitely playable. Let's see what happens when we start shooting. It's actually not bad at all. It's actually quite smooth, and this is running around like 40 to 50 for the most part. So I'm pretty pleasantly surprised. I thought it was gonna be around 25 FPS for the most part, but it's been around 45 for the most part. So I'm pretty happy with the result. I think it's a good little game to play. It's a good looking game and definitely a fun time. So with that said, let's move on to the next one. Let's do it. Okay, getting into Hellbound Flying Souls. And this is sort of like the previous game, another indie game that's obviously fun to play, not too demanding. You can play it with sort of like entry-level systems, and you know, it's a decent looking game. Right now it's on medium graphics, but the resolution scale is at 70%, so this is technically running under 720p, and yeah, I mean, it's 60 FPS, but the thing with a PC like this is you get lag spikes. Like when something loads in. Now that, like I said, if you add an SSD to this, that won't happen as much. It probably won't happen at all. But lag spikes can be annoying. So this game is also maxing out that graphics card. using all of its VRAM, and this game is using around 6 gigs of RAM. We have 8. The CPU is not working too hard, but yeah, I mean, it is what you can expect basically. And I mean, if you think about it, this PC is somewhere between a PlayStation 3 and 4. Like, it's not the most powerful PC in the world, but you can definitely game on it. But if it were me, if I had to game on a PC like this, I would definitely invest in a SSD for it, because the graphics aren't good. Obviously, you know, you wouldn't expect to play with good graphics on a PC like this, but if the graphics are going to be bad, then the game needs to be smooth at least. And the FPS is fine, but the drops are just too big, and that's why I would recommend getting a SSD for a PC like this. And that's just what it comes down to. But if the question is whether you can game on a PC like this, the answer is definitely yes. And I mean, these aren't like difficult games to run, but they are also much easier games to run, especially if you plan on just playing like indie games like these, but sort of more like 2D ones. You can definitely have a good time gaming on a system like this. And the thing is, like, right now, you know, it's not the best experience. It's like it's smooth, but there are definitely drops, but it's still fun. I'm still enjoying it. Like, that was a big drop, for instance, but I mean, that's as bad as it gets. And if you just want to sit down and game, I mean, it's not going to be the best time, but it's definitely still a fun time, if I can put it that way. So yeah, I think you can definitely game on a system like this. It's just when there's like a lot going on, it's not going to run that smoothly in instances where there's just too much going on. But you know, if you're into playing indie games or older games, a system like this will definitely suffice. And it's a lot of fun as well. I can definitely say that it's fun. Yeah, I mean, in this case it doesn't look too good, but at least it plays well, I think, because the FPS is always around like 50. But the thing is, this CPU, which is not a new CPU, you know, it's a 3rd gen i4, technically the CPU is too strong for this 550 Ti. If you could get something like a 7th gen Nvidia card, technically that's not 7th gen, but I just mean a 7 series, something like a GTX 780 or something like that, you would probably be able to game a game like this, and if you had an SSD as well, you could play something like this at 60 FPS maxed out. So that's the power that, you know, a graphics card has. But like I said, you know, now that the assets are mostly loaded in, it's running quite smoothly and it's a lot of fun. I mean, this is an instance where there's going to be like a lot of enemies, and still we are around 50 FPS. So yeah, I mean, if your use case is getting like a little PC for your kid, or your little I don't know, some kid that you know, your niece or nephew or whatever it might be, then, you know, something like this is definitely viable. Especially if they just want to play like Roblox or something. I don't really know what Roblox needs in terms of performance, but yeah, that's just sort of a use case that I can see for this. So yeah, so that's it for this one. Let me move on to the next benchmark. Stay with me. Okay, getting into Graven here, and this is another indie title similar to the previous two, that is easier to run. It's also a first-person shooter game, and this is sort of like a medieval themed game. It's a little bit more stylized than the other ones, so it's got a very unique look, but I really like the way it looks, and I think it's a really fun game as well. I haven't finished it or anything, but I do need to give it a little bit more time and maybe get to finishing it. But yeah, I think it's a good benchmark to do for a PC like this, because this is probably the sort of thing that you'll be playing. And right off the bat, this one is running a lot more smoothly. I think it's running quite well. Oh, you can kick, I didn't even realize. This sort of gives me like vibes from the old. I don't know if any of you ever played Heroes of Might and Magic: Dark Messiah. This is sort of like in the same vein as that game. Same gothic kind of setting and everything. Yeah, but the point is that I think this is a good benchmark to do, I think this is a really unique looking title that has a lot of charm to it, so to say. And yeah, so far the PC is running the game quite well. The GPU is a little bit hot again, at around, my bad, at around 85 degrees. GPU is again maxed out in terms of performance. Not using the whole gig of memory this time. CPU is around 60 degrees now. That's fine. Using around half of the CPU's power, and that's why I say like upgrading to another graphics card would be a good choice for a PC like this. Like even if you upgrade it to like a 750 Ti, that would probably be quite a sweet spot for a PC like this. And that would just enable you to either play games at maximum settings at 720p or play games at low or medium settings at HD. And again, like I said, playing from an SSD is always a good idea. But, you know, for like a budget gaming experience, this is more than possible. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's smooth. And if you aren't, if you're being realistic with the games that you want to play, you can definitely have a good time. This has almost no lag. It feels really smooth, and it's only using around 4 gigs of RAM as well, normal system RAM. So yeah, I think it's a good experience, and playing a game like this is a lot of fun. If I'm thinking back to when I was a kid and I played games like Codename Eagle or the first Half-Life, or Counter-Strike 1.6 back in the day, or Warcraft 3. Those were the kinds of games that I really enjoyed playing, and they were sort of like the easy to run games as well at the time, probably about 20 years ago. So if you have a kid that wants to get into gaming, I think a system like this is a good idea, because it's a good idea to phase kids into gaming with making them appreciate just how good PCs can be by starting them out with something that isn't top tier. That's just my take on it. I don't have a kid, but if I had one, that's probably what I would do, and then just let him play older games and appreciate gaming for what it is before moving on to the best graphics and the best sort of systems. Who can afford that anyway? But at $35, I'm not going to complain about this. This is it's a really good experience. It feels smooth. It's a lot of fun, and I would definitely recommend it. So with that said, let's move on to the last benchmark. I am going to try one AAA benchmark, and we'll see how it does. I'm not expecting much. But with that said, let's move on to the next one. Let's do it. Okay, getting into the last benchmark here. This is Hitman, and this is the most AAA game that I have for this PC. This is running at the lowest settings at 720p, and it's actually surprisingly not that bad. I thought it was going to be sort of like 30 frames maybe, but so far it's actually really not that bad, and it definitely does seem playable. The GPU has also sort of calmed down a bit in terms of temperature. It's not that high anymore. We are using the full 1 gig of video memory we have available. The CPU is working a little bit harder now, which is probably why the frame rate isn't that bad. Now I do think when we get into the big crowds it's going to fall, like 30 frames. But I think it's a playable result so far. The RAM we are using is around 5.5 gigs, and we have 8 gigs. And apart from that, yeah, I think it's a decent result. It looks good. Surprisingly, I thought it was going to look quite bad, but it actually looks really good still. The lighting is good, and it runs at a playable frame rate. There's going to be times where it's a little bit low, like right now, but then there will also be times where it's higher. And so I think, the average right now is around 38, but it is rising. And I mean, 40 FPS is a playable experience in my books, especially you wouldn't expect to play a AAA game on a system that costs $35. I think that's fair to say. So with that said, let's discuss the results. Let's do it. So that's it for the little hospice Goodwill PC. I think in some ways it actually surprised me today with how well it performed. Look, I'm not saying you can play the newest games at respectable frame rates on this thing, but for $35, you wouldn't think you would be able to get a gaming PC. And now I know gaming is relative, but there are so many games that you can play, and they don't all have to be modern. Within the last 5 years, so to say. So I think it's a good result in terms of what you can actually do with this thing. And apart from gaming, you can use it for office work, or something like this can handle light 3D modeling, light animation, stuff like that. So I don't think it's a terrible result. And I think if you added a better graphics card to this, you would actually have a half decent little gaming PC. And as is, you can use it for a nice little media PC as well. So I think it's a decent result. I think it's definitely usable, and I'm pretty happy with how it came out, especially for the price. Now I'm probably going to sell this on, and I'm probably going to make $50 on it, more or less. So the point that I'm making is you can start gaming for a very cheap budget if you just look around and if you make the effort to see what is out there. And I'm in South Africa. In America there's a lot more PCs, and I don't know how Goodwill works there, but there's a lot more going on in terms of hardware and tech stuff anyway. So yeah, you can definitely game on this, and for the price I paid, I think I will give this an A+. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you're enjoying the content. I'm trying a few new things, a few different things that I haven't done before, and hopefully you'll stick around and watch more of it. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.